Well, I think that was a very apt ending to our panel here, and I hope we can take a few minutes from the final wrap-up session to host some questions. Thank you.
Hello, Ben Roberts, Liquid Telecom. I've got a question about the Burundi Internet Exchange. Was this one, wasn't it? Yeah.
Could you talk a little slower for the benefit?
Sorry, yeah. I've got a question about the Burundi Internet Exchange. I see that obviously you've got a new Internet Exchange there. There aren't many people in Burundi who actually have an AS number at this stage. A lot of the operators you mentioned there have been using satellite IP addresses from somebody else. So what kind of challenges have you faced with the operators? Have they had to learn BGP and connect to the exchange that way?
Okay. I'm sorry, I'm going to answer in French. What I can tell you so far, yes, the gentleman needs a headset for the answer. Can you hear me? I think we should start with the beginning to try to well understand what we are doing in Burundi. First, you have to understand that right now we are setting up a national infrastructure based on optical fiber, and we have already finished the first stage. Actually, most of the operators have played a central role in the implementation of this infrastructure. Also, regarding the Internet Exchange point, we have involved each Internet access provider in its implementation. So in October 2012, thanks to the Internet Society and the African Union, we have led an awareness-raising campaign on that matter. And after that, we've had a technical training session. It was last March, on all BGPs, on how to implement the Internet Exchange points in Burundi, etc. But I won't say that the training has solved all the issues. I think we shall continue because right now we are setting up the association that is going to manage the Internet Exchange point, and all operators and Internet access providers are present in this process. So after that, there will be a TIC agent that is working at the University of Burundi that is going to support us, because I think that he's quite advanced compared to others. And we are going to see how we can organize other additional trainings. I hope I've answered your question.
Ichuki Mwangi, I have a question for Mike.
Which mic?
We have 3 mics. Okay, sorry. Mike Silva, Michael Kende, and Mike Jensen as well, based on their experience. The 3 mics. So one of the things which I have observed is that a lot of operators today will, especially the incumbents, will tend to continue selling capacity using traditional TDM infrastructure, which in itself I would say it's almost outdated technology, which makes it really expensive. For instance, you buy capacity either across a submarine or terrestrial, and you're getting STM1 capacity. Whereas the same infrastructure can actually be upgraded using the endpoints to provide DWDM, which will mean that they have multiple gigs of capacity to sell, and they can actually sell Ethernet. Now, the question I have this relating directly to the panel is, why isn't there a move from the old technology to current technology, which would actually significantly bring down the costs of capacity? Why isn't there any? I've not seen a policy push, for instance, from regulators saying, please upgrade your infrastructure to be able to apply, bring these benefits the new technology is bringing. There's no push from that. Well, and also from a business point of view, I'm not sure whether it does bring any value maintaining that old infrastructure in the current economic environment and competitive environment that is.
Well, let me give my stab at it and just a very personal viewpoint. And Shuki, I think you answered the question yourself. You would bring down costs. The unfortunate reality is that I think many operators are still stuck in that way of doing business. So some of it I don't think is a cynical disregard for the ability to change the model, but simply because people are stuck in their ways. The second is, I think that a lot of operators don't understand bandwidth growth. And they're of the view that this is a finite resource and you need to throttle it and you need to control it because you need to keep those prices artificially high, because if you lower them too much, you're going to cut your margins. They don't realize that in many respects, the further you crank that dial, the more people just use. I know the comment was made yesterday, what if you build it and they don't come? But what we've seen up until now is that in most cases is giving people a flexible bandwidth model and allowing them to just crank up that dial. They generally are taking it. The last thing, though, that I've got to mention, and I don't want to pick on any country, government, or anybody else, is you can't focus also on lowering prices to the extent that it's no longer viable to keep the network operational. We've had the experience in a couple of countries of access to government-owned and built national backbone networks, which are broken to all intents and purposes. The network efficiency is incredibly low. But the cost at which connectivity is being provided, because it's essentially a government-sponsored network, is so low that the price point has been set at a point where it's not viable for us to build. So we're almost stuck in a situation of an unreliable network and a price point that is so low that we can't build a competitive network. And trying to convince the backbone operator, the government, that their network is broken and it needs work is incredibly difficult, and partly because they're not making enough money on that national backbone to actually reinvest to keep the physical infrastructure up and to upgrade equipment as and when required. So we've got to make sure that as much as we want to push pricing down, we don't push it down so low that the network can't continue to operate because it's no longer profitable. There's got to be some fat in the network to allow you to continue to reinvest in that network.
Bonjour, Mathieu Ponessa, Jaguar Network.
Good morning. My question is destined to our friend from Algeria. I'm based in Marseille, and I've seen at the end of the years 2000 an operator called Rascom implementing a cable between Algiers and Marseille. But actually this cable was never used for traffic, for internal domestic reasons, maybe for license reasons. Beginning of the year, this cable was acquired by the operator Gizi, that has mobile it's a mobile internet, mobile Algerian on the internet. But still, again, this cable is not active, and it's a pity for a cable that has been implemented for many years for a country that needs broadband, while the population is consuming and asking more and more for it. So what has been the problem with this cable, and why this cable is not used to date to have more broadband compared to the other cables, such as those, for example, going to Spain? In any case, the answer to this question is quite complex. I think it's a more global issue. Now, regarding the need for this cable between Annaba and Marseille, it is a double cable along with the other cable installed by the public authority. So in terms of the need of transport, be it internet or general traffic, its need is not obvious. Now, the problem for this operator was a global problem it had with the Algerian government. It has nothing to do with the cable as such. It's a problem that this operator had with the Algerian state that is being treated. I think you all know the issue. It was not an action geared at this cable. I think it was a more general issue, as there are other, let's say, issues with the financial institutions of the country. I would say that these are provisional measures that were made, that are being treated. That's the only answer I can give you so far. Once again, regarding the absolute need of this cable for the international data traffic, it has not been demonstrated. It's the same route, it's the same technology, so that's it.
I have three questions. First, I'd like to know what would be the added value of having an AXP in Morocco, not only for Morocco as a country, but also for Africa as a country, as a continent. My second question is, since Morocco is getting involved, I'd like to know if there is any Moroccan ISP with us. And also, my third question is, are you interested in peering with Moroccan ISPs?
Answer in English.
I can ask the question in French if you want.
Please, okay.
D'accord, donc en fait j'ai trois questions. La première,
I had three questions. The first one: what would be the added value in Morocco and in Africa to have an XP in Morocco? The second question is, as this event is organized in Morocco, I'd like to know this. If there are any Moroccan XPs here attending this event. Third question: would you be interested in peering with a Moroccan provider if there were any XP in Morocco? Well, actually I'm asking these general questions. It's not about Algeria in particular, something.
I can answer the second two, of course, but the first question, I mean, the benefits of having an IXP, certainly at the local level, we did this study with the Internet Society on looking at it in Kenya, Nigeria, and it would hold for any country. It's to lower the cost by removing the tromboning, lower the latency of exchanging traffic, and increasing the revenue, because as caches and more content comes in, people will access it more, and that will result in more gigabits of downloads, more revenue. So those are generally the three things that are considered. Then for the rest of the continent, it spreads out, because I won't use the words regional IXP, but someone might put a cache in Morocco,
that's accessed by a neighboring country, vice versa. So content is naturally spread among the region where there's a similar language, similar background. Local content then can be easily spread and accessed at a lower cost, and vice versa. As for the second, I can ask, are there any ISPs, local ISPs here? There we go.
Bonjour, Rachida Fakhri du ministère de l'Industrie, du Commerce et des Nouvelles.
Rachida Fakhri, Minister of Industry and Commerce in Morocco. Unfortunately, there is no XP in Morocco yet, and the objective of this forum is to create a dynamic between telecom operators, the ministry, access providers, in order to set up a Moroccan ASP. There are more than 400 internet providers in Morocco. I don't know the whole list because ISO was invited. We're only sponsors and partners of the forum. I can't tell you names. Now, in order to move along what the Minister said this morning, we intend to organize with the ISOC a workshop with all access providers, decision makers of the administration in November and December 2013. We didn't hear the question. You had to ask the question to ISOC. Maybe they have, I don't know, invitation criteria. We are only partners. We are not organizers of the forum, but you're welcome in the next one that will be held in November, December 2013. We can't hear the question.
In pairing with Moroccan ISPs. Serez-vous intéressé par le pairing avec des fournisseurs d'accès à Internet marocains?
Well, let me try and answer that one. We, as Liquid, are very pro-peering, but I can't see there being a significant amount of traffic running from Morocco to Zimbabwe, other than going around the continent through one of the submarine cables. So the likelihood is that it's going to be almost as efficient for us to transit through the UK or Germany, Holland, through one of the European exchange points, as it would be to peer with you in Morocco. And the cost to us of actually putting a peering link through over here would be quite significant. So I can't see it being viable for our customer base, because our customer base is in the south of Africa, Central and Eastern Africa. I can't see a huge amount of our users looking at your content, or for that matter, your users looking at our content. So would we have a principal objection? No, not at all. We welcome peering with everybody. But what we tend to find is most effective is keeping local traffic local. So our real interest is peering with our peers. So people in the same country as us, people in the same region as us, is where we're really passionate about peering. Trying to peer from one region to another is not that effective because the distances are just so great and there's no direct route. We're going to have to find an indirect route to move that traffic anyway. So then it would make sense to go to an aggregation point instead of now having to build and buy a route into Morocco. It would be easier for us to meet in London or Amsterdam or somewhere like that.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael. We're starting to eat into our next session, so hope these last two questions here will be fairly short and to the point.
Okay. Mark Tinkasikom. I was just going to speak to Michuki's question earlier about why we're seeing legacy last mile infrastructure still coming into play. And I think from our perspective, there are three key reasons we've seen this to be the same. More and more providers in Africa are still going for SDH and so forth. And, you know, the panel can weigh in if they can, but to some extent, there's a bit of fear from the operators with Ethernet, and they feel they have more trust in the reliability of SDH or TDM and so forth. So that's one reason that we see this happening. The other one also is distance between the customer end and the POP. In most cases, Ethernet tends to work very well if the distance is not too great for various reasons. If last mile needs to extend between 3 or 4 countries, in all likelihood, to string a circuit together between these networks will most likely be TDM. And also, on the marine side, for example, the governance structure of submarine operators can also influence this. In most cases, you will find that the makeup of the marine provider will be such that Ethernet is not an option or may never be an option. In other cases, you find that Ethernet could be an option. And what we're then seeing in cases where there is Ethernet as an option, providers are more amenable to Ethernet over DWDM. So where it's not running on MPLS, for example. Africa is where Asia is today to some extent. Europe was maybe 5, 6, 7 years ago. In Europe and North America, MPLS, Ethernet backbones is not a big deal. There's an element of trust in those providers. Asia Pac and Africa, Business South America, maybe not yet. But ultimately what we see, especially with the remote peering, with the discussions we had this week, the smaller ISPs that are looking to control costs will not find this as big of an issue, and they'll be a little bit more trusting than the larger ones. But you can only take SDH so far. You get about 10 gig, fine, there's 40 gig, but nobody really runs it. And then after that, it's Ethernet again, 40 GE, 100 GE, 400 GE, whatever. So Ethernet will come back at some point. And we're slowly starting to see more and more operators in Africa now moving away from SDH and realizing that Ethernet is a much more scalable approach to connecting to the network.
Thanks, Mark, for that interesting insight there.
So I think I have, I had one question, but I think I have one response to give with respect to the question asked on whether we did invite the operators from Morocco. And we did actually make an effort to reach out through the various channels that were available to us by passing the message as much as we could in terms of sending invites directly to the operators and also through the local lists that exists here in Morocco that we know. So if the message did not get through, then probably the fault or the blame should come to ISOC in that we did not reach out enough to or hard enough to get the operators there. But I would want to believe that we did our effort, considering that we have people as far as South Africa and Morocco, on Algeria and Senegal present. So we do our best to send invites, but reasons why people do not attend would always be beyond the control of the organizers. But we will make improvements to make sure this is better in the future. So my question was actually going to go to Algeria with respect to the presentation. I was actually quite impressed by the level of the infrastructure rollout, where you have 40G and 10G circuits. And also in the same presentation, you mentioned that you have 30 ISPs and 3 mobile operators. So my curiosity is, do they have access to this infrastructure? And what is the role or what is the model that you've used in allowing access to the 33 meaning the 30 ISPs plus the 3 mobile operators in accessing this hugely impressive infrastructure that you've built? Is it using open access, or do you have another business model that is in use? Because I believe other countries in Africa are struggling to build a business model that can be basically used to benefit all the operators. And as Mike has mentioned, some of the models that have been used are really not working and don't encourage building competition or building infrastructure, additional infrastructure, or anything of that kind. Thank you.
I would like to. It's an open infrastructure. The infrastructure is essentially owned by the legacy operator, Algeria Telecom, and the law and the regulator. It's an obligation for to provide the bandwidth and the links for each operator that ask for this, or an ISP. For the mobile operators, since they have the license is to operate and to build their own infrastructure, they can develop their network, or they can ask Algeria Telecom to provide what they need. And the regulator has the role to verify if the prices are correctly done, because the prices must be based on the cost of the infrastructure, not more. And there is an interconnection catalog that must be published yearly. Now for the other ISPs with another model of business that the law allows for them, they haven't the ability to develop their own networks. They can build the access, wireless access, for example, WiMAX or any other technology when the frequencies are available, and they can use the microwave, the line of sight microwaves. They are allowed to use them. Now, for using the terrestrial the infrastructure fiber, they must go to ask Algeria Telecom, which now has the property already, all the infrastructure, since the second fixed operator has left the market 3 years ago because he was not able to reach the requirements of what he has to do. I think it's clear, otherwise I will say it in English, in French.
If the chair would let me just build on that question. So the infrastructure is owned by the Algeria Telecom. Now, in many countries, at least I've seen this in East Africa, and I've seen this in some Southern African countries, where the national broadband infrastructure is built, run, and maintained by the incumbent. Other operators getting onto that infrastructure is either very painful, very expensive, and subject to quality of service. So we'd like to hear of the experience, or rather what has the government done to ensure that it's not painful for the other operators to get onto that infrastructure. The business pricing is competitive enough, and the quality of service is maintained.
I can add this. Now what I have said is where we are today, since up to now the majority of the infrastructure was done and transferred to Algeria Telecom, or it has been done by Algeria Telecom itself as an operator. Now, for the new strategy, we are building a new model where we introduced a new passive infrastructure operator, and this operator will be public. and they will dig the trenches, and they will make reservations for the operators for the backbone or aggregation. It depends on what. And Algeria Telecom will be an operator as another, unless it install the fiber first, and Algeria Telecom will provide at low cost the service. In this case, the other operators will not put their own fiber. It's not necessary. And is it clear?
Unless any of the panelists have any burning comments to make, I think we need to close up. We're running half an hour late, but I think Coppens has a brief comment to make before we close.
Okay, merci de m'accorder la parole. Thanks for giving me the floor. One question was put by one of the intervenants about the value of the internet exchange point and about the infrastructures in general. I think that the IXP in each country is very important. Why? I'll give you a very simple example. Last Saturday, I was sending an email to someone who was at the second level. I was at the first level. The distance was maximum 20 meters, but the message, the email that I have sent, actually has transited through 100,000 kilometers. Do you think this is logical to send in an email who is maybe sitting at the other side of the table? So I think it's necessary to have infrastructure such as optical fiber at the local level. That's the first thing. Second thing, it's also necessary to see how we can use the domain names in each of our countries, and also let's take the governmental context. If the e-government applications had to move through international stations outside the country, you understand that there is an unuseful use of the broadband, and there are also implications in terms of a response time to get the email back. So all this contributes to the price rise. On the other hand, if the internet access provider has any issue, problem overseas, the email will not be delivered. That's why I think it's of the utmost importance to have an IXP in each one of the countries. That was my comment. Thank you.
I think you'll agree with me that some valuable experiences here have been shared, and perhaps we can have a round of applause for the panelists before we close. Thank you, everyone.